Hello everyone, Mason here. How you doing? Today I'm going to be talking about The Bone Maker by Sarah Beth Durst. Right, so since I started reading again, I've been pretty lucky. Everything that I've picked up so far has been quite good, and because of that, you've only really heard me talk about things that I've enjoyed. Today's going to change that. I've never read anything by Sarah Beth Durst before, but the description of the book was intriguing, and I was quite excited to get started with it. The Bone Maker is a fantasy novel. 25 years ago, 5 heroes risked their lives to save the world, and they were successful. They vanquished the evil Bone Maker named Ecklaw, who used an inhuman army of bone soldiers to serve him. But, as is always the case with defeating evil, victory came at a price. Kria's husband was killed on the battlefield, and since then, she's dedicated her life to bringing him back. She's been doing so periodically, but for every day that he lives, she will live one less. This type of magic is highly illegal. After death, the bodies are supposed to be burnt, as is anyone who's caught using them. But Kria is absolutely determined to find a way to bring Gent back permanently, and she knows exactly where she can find enough bones to do so. The Forbidden Zone, the battlefield where Gent was killed in the first place. But going there reveals an awful truth. Evil may not be as vanquished as it seems. I've got to say, guys, I had a mixed relationship with this book. Our initial meeting was enjoyable. There seemed to be a promising friendship brewing between us, but then we spent a little bit more time together, and the seeds of resentment began to sprout. They threatened to blossom into a full-on tree of boredom, but then I trudged onwards, and eventually we settled on being acquaintances that would spend a mildly enjoyable time together, but will never see each other again. There are things that I do like about the Bone Maker. The concept itself is intriguing, and the magic is easy to understand, well defined, and pretty interesting. You've got 3 main branches: Bone Wizards, Readers, and Makers. Bone Wizards can craft talismans that can be activated to enhance stealth, speed, strength, and other attributes. Bone Readers are essentially fortune tellers. They can use the bones to answer questions about the past, present, or future. Bone Makers can animate the bones of dead animals, or sometimes people, to create constructs that will do their bidding, whether that's cleaning, opening doors, or slaughtering people if you're evil. I like that it centres around a found family of heroes that have already been through so much. They've already lived through one story. They thought they got the job done. I like that it explores the after effects of taking part in saving the world, the price that they have to pay, the effects that it has on the psyche. I like that it explores how far people will go in the name of love, where the line is, and whether it's okay to cross it. I like that it draws comparisons between the main character and the villain, but also explores the ways in which they're different. Unfortunately, I don't think that I like the delivery of the Bone Maker as much as I like the concepts and ideas within it. At times, I found the writing simplistic and repetitive. There was one section where the author was describing the landscape, and she must have used phrases like the murky greenness or some variation upon that a dozen times in such a short section. There was a very limited selection of creatures that inhabited the world. Other than the constructs created by the villain, there was maybe only a handful of other monsters, and they all had only 1 or 2 descriptors. I found myself struggling to imagine what they looked like, and it left me feeling like I wanted more. To me, the world building felt pretty basic, and it was one of the things that I was most disappointed with. There were only really a few places that we became familiar with, and on multiple occasions the main character and her friends travelled cross country, but it never felt like they were actually travelling to me. They decided they wanted to go somewhere, and after maybe one brief event, they arrived. Other than the fact that the landscape was mountainous, I never felt like I got a good feel for what the world looked like. It was not an enthralling place that made me want to spend more time there. Let's talk about the characters for a bit. At first, I definitely liked Kriya. She gave me this sense of loneliness, desperation and dedication. She spent 25 years trying to snatch more time with her husband. She's been reviving him and watching him die over and over again, and she hasn't lived her own life because she spent so much time trying to do so. She lives alone in this broken down tower with only her bone constructs for company. She's repeatedly broken the law and put herself in danger to get the ingredients that she needs to bring Gent back. She clearly loves him so much, but she's just not ready to let him go, and it's quite sad. However, as the story progressed, I grew to like her less and less. Kriya definitely suffers from main character syndrome. She thinks that she knows best, but at the same time, she thinks that she's responsible for everyone and blames herself for everything that goes wrong, even if it isn't even slightly her fault. By the end of it, she was my least favourite character overall. The rest of the team are far more likeable. You've got Stron, the brutish family man. His heart is as big as his muscles. He's as gentle as he is strong. We've all encountered this guy in other stories, but to be honest, I've got a soft spot for this sort of character. Then you've got Marzo, the team's bone reader. He's deeply troubled by what he went through in the Bone War and suffers from a bad case of PTSD, which the book explores well. I found his character arc one of the more engaging elements of the story. To be honest, I wasn't much for Kriya's husband, Gent. I didn't think that he had that much depth as a character, and he had some predictable moments, but I did enjoy his interactions with the rest of the team, especially with Stron, who he has some good banter with, and together they work really well as a team. Then there's Zira, the team's bone maker. In the 25 years since the Bone War, Zira has entered high society. She has reaped the rewards of being a hero and built herself a successful business. She's sarcastic, conceited, vain, obnoxious and overly dramatic, but somehow she ended up being the most likeable character, which is strange to say considering that her initial introduction made me hate her so much that I almost quit reading the book then and there. But she's got all the best lines of dialogue. Some of the stuff that she says is so funny. She's got the most depth as a character, and her arc is by far the most interesting element of the Bone Maker. She is, in my opinion, the heart of the story, and without her, I wouldn't have enjoyed this book at all. I'm a pretty simple man, guys. I'm pretty easily pleased. It's not hard to elicit an emotional response out of me. I am into my characters. I like the good guys, I hate the bad guys, and if you've got a good villain, I will get behind the heroes. Unfortunately, I didn't care about the villain at all. I feel like the author was trying to make him a morally grey character with understandable motivations, but I just never cared about him. I didn't buy into that. The main characters see him as the devil, and I didn't buy into that either because I never got a sense of why I should hate him other than the fact that he's the villain. To be honest, I think what I said about the world building didn't help. I wasn't worried about the world because I never felt like it was built up enough. We only became familiar with a few places, and so Eklaw's threat didn't really matter to me. I feel like if I'd have had more information about what actually happened during the Bone War, I would have cared a bit more. But the main characters don't want to think about it, and so they don't. And I just never got a sense of why we should hate Eklor past he killed people, which is so basic. Maybe if the Bone War had been a prequel to this, I would have been more invested, but without that villain to hate, I never got behind the heroes properly. I did enjoy the climactic part of the Bone Maker. When the action kicked in, it was quite enjoyable, but unfortunately, I hadn't invested. It took so long to get there, so little happened before it, and the stakes felt so low to me that I just didn't care that much. It was mildly enjoyable, but I wasn't gripped. In all fairness, maybe I'm just a miserable bastard. Maybe this book just wasn't for me, and other people will pick it up and think that it was great. I really hope that that's the case, because I didn't hate the Bone Maker and think it was terrible. I just didn't love it, and I didn't think it was that great. I gave it 3 stars, and only just, mostly because of how entertaining I found Zero by the end of it. But I won't be recommending this to my friends, and I won't be reading it again. I haven't particularly enjoyed giving a negative review, but I also want you guys to know that I'm not going to come on here, feed you a load of BS and lie and tell you that I liked something even though I didn't. I'm always going to give an honest review whether I hated, liked, or was indifferent to something. I'm also not going to come on here and rip something to shreds for the sake of it. There were parts of the Bone Maker that I did like, and I tried to talk about them. Of course, I've got no idea what it's going to be like when I eventually read something that I absolutely hate. Either way, I hope that you've enjoyed today's review. If you have, say hello in the comments section and we'll have a chat. Then you can make friends with the like button and subscribe so that you never miss any future content. Thanks so much for spending time with me today, guys. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care. I'm off, and you should have a good one.